Hello and welcome to Fantasy and Frames Wednesday night Dynasty 365 in the house. Me and your boy Drew. We're going to talk about some guys. Start up. Who do you want outside of the top 10, 12 guys? The number one, obviously, the picks everybody knows and wants. Who are some guys we're eyeing? Who do we want in that startup draft? Who we want to come away with? Stick with us here. We're going to get into it now here on Dynasty 365 on Fantasy and Frames. Drew, thanks for joining me tonight. I got hostess duties as Jorge, busy, getting sick like a lot of everybody has, need to rest up, get some sleep, man, get some sleep. I felt that way earlier this week, over the weekend, man, just so much stuff going on right now, wearing myself down. I think I slept on Monday like 14 hours. I was like dead. I was dead. So I understand how it is. Anybody who was looking forward to the Around the Ice show, sorry, we had to cancel that tonight. Bunch of scheduling conflicts. Anyone in the future for now, Monday nights, late night, 10 Eastern, 9 Central time is we're going to see Around the Ice here on Fantasy and Frames. Had to make some adjustments. A few of us coach other sports, and we're right in the middle of winter sports, and schedules are getting a little hectic right now. So Monday nights, late night is we're going to do Around the Ice. Jorge, I think Thursday night, tomorrow, hopefully, we're going to jump in and do a similar segment to what we're doing tonight, what me and Drew are doing here on Dynasty 365. We're going to do the same thing we're doing IDP on Shoot the Gap tomorrow night. So that episode, which is usually going around this time, is going to be tomorrow. So just a couple of those programming notes for everybody, where to kind of find us on those. To help you, like and subscribe. Hit the notification button. That helps you know when we're all going on, all these shows. We have a lot of stuff going on. It's the off season. Things are a little crazy. The combine is starting. We're about underway. One of my favorite times of the year. I will be there Friday and Saturday, bringing you guys the business. Me and John McGlynn will be over there doing some interviews, watching everything. I tell you what, before we get into this, combine's exciting. I know people... I know it's tough because guys all of a sudden are opting out here and there, but I tell you what, there's always some gems. And I tell you what, you know who was my number one player last year coming out of the combine? Brian Thomas Jr. I watched Brian Thomas Jr. at the combine, and I told everyone he is clear-cut wide receiver 4, and he might be wide receiver 3. I watched him at the combine. He absolutely lit that thing up. He looked amazing across the board. Everything he did, I was like, I love this guy. And people were like, oh, is he a go route guy, just a TD guy? I'm like, I don't care. I was like, this guy's legit. He's got size. He's fast as shit. I mean, every drill he ran, I'm like, if this guy didn't have Malik Neighbors on his team, what would he have done? I mean, it was, if you would have put him on probably 100 other D1 teams, he would have absolutely led the nation in everything. I was like, this guy's awesome. And so I was all over Brian Thomas Jr. As a Steelers fan, I saw a bunch of Steelers fans online going, we effed up. We should take Brian Thomas Jr. last year. I'm like, I know we should. I know they should have. I was like, oh my God. So yeah, Brian Thomas Jr. was my favorite guy. I tell you who else I really thought popped last year at the combine was JJ McCarthy. That's when he sold me. He sold me at the combine last year. So I was in the very we're both Midwest guys. I saw a ton of Michigan games. I'm like, great defense, great running game, great offensive line. I'm like, JJ McCarthy's a solid QB. Did I look at him and go, man, this guy's like gonna be a stud in the NFL? No, I didn't watch the games and think that at all. I saw the combine and just being there in person, I saw the zip on his throws. I saw the tightness. I saw him where he was placing deep balls in different drills. And I was like, this guy is a lot better than I think I'm giving him credit for. And I think that's where his rise started to go up. So just to tell people, just to full on get out there, I watched, he was right next to Bo Nix. He looked 100 times better than Bo Nix last year at the combine. And we saw what kind of year Bo Nix had as a rookie. So I'm super excited about JJ McCarthy, what he could possibly do. I've learned the good and the bad. So those were two guys I was totally on at the combine because I loved them. Two guys that I absolutely blew it on based on the combine was Bo Nix and Bucky Irving. So those were two guys.
I'm with you on Bucky. Yeah, I dropped Bucky too after the way he tested. It made me really nervous. Yeah,
I liked Bucky so much.
I know. Like his tape was great. I love Bucky's tape coming out of college, and I'm right there with you. I saw how he tested, and I was like, shit, here we go. And I got nervous, and I dropped him. And man, because of that, I didn't have as much Bucky as I would have liked to, whenever rookie drafts came around last year. And so I tried to make that right with one of the trades you and I made.
And honestly, that was one of the few Bucky shares I had, was the one I traded you. And it's kind of hard for me to give it up because I was like, gosh, I liked him, but I didn't have him anywhere. So I always try to look at it, and I'm like, okay, give my rankings pre-combine, pre-NFL draft, and then try to combine those rankings, because sometimes you see, I've had the pattern, like the Bucky Irving killed me because I loved him. The combine didn't look great. He got decent draft capital, but then I got nervous about Rachaad White, even though I don't like Rachaad White. I was like, so like, I think you got to put all that stuff and combine it together, because a lot of times I find myself passing on guys I really liked before everything started hitting. Like I liked in college, I liked the film. They either didn't do great at the combine, or they didn't get the draft capital I thought they should, and then they drop way far in my rankings. Not to say though you shouldn't adjust rankings, but like I've had guys drop off my board, and I'm like, oh, I shouldn't have just like ignored that guy. I should. Maybe he drops a couple spots, but like, don't just not draft him anymore if he gets to your spot. So what do you think about that? Like, kind of doing the pre-ranking, watching stuff happen, and then obviously readjusting after the NFL draft.
Yeah. So first off, Jorge, we miss you too, man. Hope you get to feeling better, rest up, so that we can get the whole crew back together next week. But no, I mean, I'm with you. I like to try to get some pre-combine rookie rankings together. And I honestly don't let the combine affect mine too much for the most part. But it does at least start to make me nervous, because I know the combine performance can affect their draft capital, and draft capital weighs heavy on my rookie rankings. That is a big piece of it. And so I don't necessarily move guys around too much because of the combine, but the results of the combine could directly affect where they get drafted, because NFL teams do pay attention to that stuff, at least to a certain extent. And so, if a guy's poor testing ends up dropping him in the NFL draft, then at that point, post NFL draft, I'm going to drop him. And Bucky was a guy that dropped for me. I had him pretty high pre-combine, pre-NFL draft, and then he didn't test well. He went day 3 to Tampa, and Rachaad White was there, who Lord knows he wasn't the most efficient runner, but he was serviceable, and it's like, man, if Bucky tested this way and he didn't get the draft capital, was there really anything there? And the talent shined through. And it was just one of those, he was kind of like an outlier. Most day 3 running backs don't hit like that. And we'll really see how much of an outlier he is this year, because you see day 3 running backs pop from time to time, like the Dameon Pierces of the world, that have like a good rookie year, but then they do what day 3 running backs tend to do and kind of fall off. Now, I don't have those reservations about Bucky. Maybe it's just bias on my part because I liked him pre-draft, and then he popped in the NFL, and I didn't feel that way about guys like Dameon Pierce that I wasn't as high on. So maybe it's just bias on my part, but I think Bucky's the real deal. And so, I think he's going to stick. But for the draft capital, it affects the way I look at players a lot, because no matter how good I think I am at watching tape or, analyzing these guys, there's people that do this stuff for a career that have proven that, not to say they get everything right, but for the most part, these guys are pretty good at their jobs. And so you kind of have to just defer to draft capital to a point. And so the draft capital will affect my rankings a lot more than the combine results will.
Yeah, I agree with you. Draft capital is a big one for me, but also for me, I've learned follow the talent.
Yeah.
Because a big one that I've gotten snake bitten by is landing spot where I think they're going to end up being. And
Yep.
I'm like, oh, follow the talent, man. I always tell this story.
Landing spot
AJ
all day.
Brown. AJ Brown was my kryptonite. I absolutely loved AJ Brown.
Yeah.
And then the Titans took him, and I'm like,
Yeah.
I
Shit.
don't want him anywhere. I was like, no,
Yeah.
I didn't draft him anywhere. I literally didn't draft him anywhere because I'm like, I hate the Titans. I hate this setup. I don't like it at all. And
Yeah.
I'm like, he's just gonna like waste away in Tennessee. And then next thing you know, we get straight to the Eagles. And I was like literally watching when they got traded. I was like, this is why you just draft the guy that's awesome. And because you never know if the situation is going to change. And I will say, especially in the NFL these days, situations can change quickly. It's
Very
not
quick.
the old school days 15, 20 years ago where teams did not trade guys. They held on to them till their death, like no matter what. And like guys can get moved now. So
Yeah.
I know in the early days of Dynasty for me, I was way too entrenched on who's the starter, who's the backup. Oh, I have this starter running back for the Texans, and now they took a guy in the 4th round. He
Mhm.
automatically has to be the backup in the handcuff. I have to take him over a player higher rated that I like better. But no, I got to have my handcuff running back. And then in 2 years, that guy's not even on the team anymore. You
Yeah.
know, so it's like I that's something I've had to adjust my brain over the years, dynasty wise, is
Mhm.
when it comes down to it, draft the talent.
Oh, it's such a good point.
Situation matters some, but it's not the end all be all. Where I used to
Right.
draft situation over talent, and I've totally flipped on that.
Yeah. So to your point with AJ Brown, even as bad as the situation was that he got drafted into, he was still a borderline top 20 receiver his rookie year. He was a wide receiver 1 his second year in Tennessee. So even in the bad situation, the run first offense, everything like that, the talent still shined. And to your point with landing spot, I've got the lesson that the hard lesson that I had to learn. This predates my time with fantasy and frames, but I think it was actually the first year I started doing my own dynasty rookie rankings, and I was just doing this just. I mean, it's still for fun technically, but I didn't have I wasn't a part of a brand or on a platform anywhere. I was just doing it myself. Pre-draft, I had Clyde Edwards-Helaire as my running back 5. He was my least favorite running back, but behind DeAndre Swift, behind Cam Akers, behind J.K. Dobbins, behind Jonathan Taylor. He was my clear RB5. And post-draft, after he's the only running back that goes in the first round, he lands in the nuts landing spot with Kansas City. I move him up to RB1. I have the 101 in my home dynasty league. It's a 1 quarterback league. So I'm sitting there with the 101. I move CEH up because of the landing spot over Jonathan Taylor, and I take CEH 1 overall in my rookie draft that year. And then, hey, week 1, that Thursday night football game, he looked great. I felt like a genius. I am so good at this. And then just from then on out, it was just nothing but bad the entire time. And that was a very hard lesson that I had to learn, that to an extent, you need to kind of trust yourself whenever there are other players that have similar draft capital that you believed had better tape. Just trust that. Like, it's one thing if you're debating a guy that got drafted in the 1st round versus a guy that got drafted in the 4th or the 5th round. But whenever you had guys like JT that went early 2nd, DeAndre Swift that went early 2nd, J.K. Dobbins doing early 2nd, these guys that before injuries and things like that, they looked really promising as well. Like, those were all guys pre-draft that I liked a lot more than CEH, that I on tape, I thought that they looked a lot better, and that I let the landing spot just completely just fog up everything else that I cared about. And I had to pay the price for it. So I learned that lesson the hard way.
This is a perfect example. I literally had this conversation on X where like somebody was like talking about these, and I actually know it wasn't on X. It was on one of my Discords that I'm in, and I literally brought up this exact situation.
Yeah.
And they were talking about running backs, and I said, they're like, "Where are you at on RBs?" And I'm like, these are my top 5, and I'm like, my top 3 are going to be my top 3 no matter where they land this year. I'm taking those guys top 3. And I absolutely related it to this story. I said JT was my number 1. I was taking him no matter where he landed. He was number 1 for me. And then a bunch of people, you weren't the only one. A bunch of people was like, oh, Chiefs, perfect landing spot. You got to take him. And I was like, I'm taking, and I ended up with 0 CH. I'm just telling you, I had 0 because I was like, I was dead set on JT was my number 1 back. I took him absolutely everywhere that he got to me. If I was 101, 102, 103, I took him no matter what I needed in any league. I took him if he got to me. And then the next one, I was Swift and then J.K. Dobbins. Those were my 3 guys. I was like, I'm taking those 3 in a row, no matter what. And that's what happened. So that's what I kind of equated that to this year. I'm G&T, Hampton, Henderson.
Okay.
I honestly don't know if I care where they land. Where they land is going to matter. It's going to help. But I think I'm taking those guys top 3 no matter where they end up. Regardless of the situation, if somebody else sneaks in and goes like top 2nd round, so say somebody takes Caleb Johnson top 2nd round, but somebody takes Henderson the end of the 2nd round, or even just get crazy. Say somebody takes the end of the beginning of the 3rd round.
Yeah.
I still think I'm taking Henderson over him for me personally. So that draft position, or this one team took a guy 15, 20 picks in front of another guy is not going to make a difference for me. Now, once we get beyond that, it's a gigantic determiner for me this year. There's a ton of RBs I like, but I'm going to let the NFL determine for me where those guys 100%. Are in my draft ranking process, like who I'm going to take depending on who comes up, because they're so close. They're so close. So now here's a question, and I want to bring this up to you before we get into the guys we're going to talk about in the startup. But I get combine fever. We had to go through this.
Yeah.
So if there's a running back I really loved pre-draft I loved, and say he goes early 4th round, but there's a running back I wasn't super high on. He's maybe 6-7 spots lower in my rankings, but he goes 3rd round, technically. Say maybe it's mid to late 3rd round. So maybe you're thinking 15 picks difference. It's like 15 picks difference or something, 20 picks difference. I have no problem taking the guy that got drafted in the 4th that I liked better than the guy in the 3rd. I'm not going to take that guy just because he got drafted earlier. Is that a big difference for you? Say the guy gets picked 20 picks earlier in the 3rd round than the guy that goes in the 4th, but you had him like maybe 5 spots higher in your rankings.
Yeah.
How do you look at that? How does that affect you?
The magic number or the buzzword or whatever is day 2 draft capital, right? It's like, we want our guys to have day 2 draft capital. But the reality is, whenever you break it down of the day 2 draft capital running backs, whenever you break down the hit rates of 2nd round running backs versus 3rd round running backs, the 2nd round guys are hitting so much more often than the 3rd round guys, to the point to where if a running back's getting drafted late 3rd round, they're like one of the comp picks, that gets added to the back of the 3rd round or something like that. And then a running back I really like let's say Dylan Sampson, a running back that I'm not extremely high on. I know a lot of people like him. I have him lower than most, but let's say he goes back in the 3rd round, and then Bashil Tootin out of Virginia Tech, a guy who I like a lot, he goes top of the 4th round. And the landing spots aren't a huge difference or anything like that in terms of the competition in front of them. I'm probably going to stick with the guy that I liked a lot more on tape, and those are just names that I'm just throwing out there, just looking at guys that I'm higher on versus guys that I'm lower on. Like, I still have Sampson ahead of Tootin in my rankings, but just that he's a guy I'm lower on the consensus compared to Tootin, who I'm higher on. But so, no, I mean, the back of the 3rd round, things like that, even though they're technically a day 2 pick, I don't let that affect me as much. But if there's a running back that I didn't like a ton that gets 2nd round draft capital, that's whenever I'm like, okay, I got to go back and watch some more tape. Even if I still don't love what I see, this guy's going to rise up my rankings because he's going to get opportunity. Like he's going to get a shot getting that type of draft capital, and I have to reevaluate my thinking. And clearly, I'm missing something. Regardless if I can see it or not, they're seeing something that I'm not, and you kind of have to roll with that. So I think that the second round draft capital is a bigger deal to me than like a mid-late third round draft capital.
I agree with you. I'm 100% in that boat. First, second rounder. It just puts too much weight. You got to be on those guys.
Yeah.
Third to fifth round, I'm going to lean towards my rankings, and then I'm also going to lean towards landing spot.
Yeah,
if a guy gets taken to the third, but you're like, God, he's got somebody definitely in front of him that's like the clear-cut starter.
Right.
And then you get a guy that gets taken mid-fourth or early fifth, and you're like, he's going to a jumbled situation. There's like no definite guy. I'm probably going to lean to the guy that I have higher ranked, especially, and I will preface this by saying the old school days, you had to take a running back first, second round. Like if those guys were the only guys who were going to start. With the devalued running back, which as a former running back kills my soul, but as running backs have been devalued,
right?
Guys easily are getting drafted in the third, fourth round that teams are looking at them as like that guy's our potential starter. Like they're not thinking those guys as backups. Like in the past, if you get drafted in the fourth, fifth round, you were a second string at best, probably a third stringer on the team. That was how they were drafting you that way. These days, if you get drafted in the third, fourth round, you have a decent shot to be considered like the starter, if not in a competition for the starter role at running back. Now, other positions, not so much, but running back, because it's been devalued, those people kind of think they can wait and take guys and still hit. So that's the one position for me that I am not as worried about being a day two pick as I am at other positions. Now, first, second round, like you said, if there's a guy I didn't like at all and he got taken in the second, I agree with you. Now all of a sudden I got to look at him. I'm like, hey, dude, they took this guy, especially this year. With a loaded running back class. If a team tells me we love this guy, you gotta stop and look at it. Yeah. If there's 20 backs we love and somebody says this is RB4 or RB5 and he was RB12 for me, I gotta reevaluate. Because obviously that guy's gonna be in the mix fantasy wise. And even if you still don't love him, and this is something I've had to bite on. I don't love a guy, but you got to take him for the value and then trade him.
Yeah, that's true too.
Will Levis is my perfect example. I hated Will Levis. I probably talked more shit about Will Levis than any person in fantasy. I liked the talent. I liked the high upside. I just saw so much downside, and I just felt like the turnovers that he committed at Kentucky, I was like, oh my God, that's going to bite him in the ass in the NFL. And that's why I told everybody, I was like, I'm not hating Will Levis because I think Will Levis is terrible. I'm like, the guy has talent. He has a monster arm. I'm like, if you look at the turnovers he made in college, they're going to get exacerbated in the NFL. And it's going to be a huge problem. And so that's why I didn't like him. But I blew it because I let my blindness of not liking him, not taking him in rookie drafts when it was value.
Yeah.
And I should have taken him and traded him. You know what I mean? I should have drafted him, even though I didn't like him, knowing I didn't like him. I should have drafted him and held him and then traded him for better value. So, again, even though we've been doing this, you and me both, a long time, I still learn stuff every year. Like, okay, I'm like, oh, I messed that up. I blew that. I got to rethink that. So, as we talk about that and we got everything. Hey, Robert, thank you for jumping in here and joining us. We appreciate everybody else that's in the show. We've been kind of talking about a little combine, little ideas of dynasty drafting guys. This is a good segment into what we're going to talk tonight. We're going to talk startup, which is another big thing. So we were talking combine, rookie drafts. Startup's another one of those. You got to look at value. Where are you getting guys? And then where's the best spot to maybe draft a guy, even if you don't like him, to move him? Tonight, what we want to talk about is what are some of the guys we like in a startup draft that aren't a top 12 guy. So isn't a top 12 quarterback, isn't a top 12 running back, top 5, 6 tight end, maybe top 24 wide receiver as top 2. What are some guys that we like as far as you going into a new startup this year? Who do you want to come out with? Who are you eyeing at the value where you think you can get them? Drew, let's start things off with you. Let's jump into QB right off the bat. Obviously, QB, super flex. So for the viewers, anybody paying attention, we're talking about super flex, 1 point PPR, 1.5 tight end premium. So this is kind of how we're evaluating these things. Just so you know, because obviously 1 QB or no tight end premium, vastly different how you're drafting these guys in a startup. So, but we're gonna go super flex, 1 PPR, 1.5 tight end premium. Who is a guy that you got your eye on that you definitely want to look at getting value wise? Someone that's outside the top 12, it's not a QB1, but you is somebody you think you want to try to figure out how you can get him and where you think you might be able to get him in a startup draft.
Yeah. So I've been a big fan of this guy. I'm probably going to get made fun of for this by a couple of the guys that are going to watch the show, but Anthony Richardson, man, according to the January 2025 Superflex Dynasty ADP from DLF, he's the quarterback 23. I've got him up at quarterback 16 in my personal dynasty ranking still. The quarterback 23 comes out to like late 4th, early 5th round pick, but in a recent startup mock that Jorge ran for Fantasy and Frames that you guys reviewed last week, if you haven't checked that out, you should go back and check that out. He went in the middle of the 7th round.
Seventh round. I was losing my mind. He went in the 7th round.
Yeah, it's wild, man. And in the DLF ADP, he's just behind Bryce Young and Sam Darnold, who we don't even know where he's going to play next year. He's just ahead of JJ McCarthy, Matt Stafford, Geno Smith. And I get it. I do. The tape has not been great when he's been on the field. And then just being on the field in general between the injuries and getting benched for Flacco last year, which I still don't understand to this day. I mean, it's not like Flacco made him a Super Bowl contender in the first place, but it's been a battle just being on the field for Richardson. So I get it, but I can't get away from the fantasy upside that he offers whenever he is on the field. Once he took the starting job back last year in week 11 before he ended up missing the last 2 weeks of the year to another injury, he was the quarterback 8 in points per game from week 11 until he ended up missing some more games for injury. And then the first 4 weeks of his rookie season, he was the quarterback 4 in points per game. And those 4 games, he only played 2 of them in full. He was still the quarterback 4 in points per game those first 4 weeks. And so it's just the upside is there with the rushing that he has and the big arm that he has. There's no denying that it's a gigantic gamble to take, especially in super flex leagues. Whenever you're having to, based on his ADP, you're having to invest a 4th or a 5th round pick on him. But I can't stay away. And basically, any super flex startup draft that I do, I'm taking my QB1 in the 1st or 2nd round, most often the 1st round, just depending on where I'm picking. But so that means in this scenario, Anthony Richardson would be my QB2. And if I'm going that route, I'm likely going to be one of the first managers to take my QB3 in that case, just in case Richardson doesn't work out, to kind of try to hedge a little bit. Because, I mean, the reality is if Richardson doesn't hit this year, the Colts could very well move on and go in a different direction at quarterback, and he could be trying to get a job elsewhere. And then you have the question mark of, is he even a starter in the league? Like that is the downside of drafting Anthony Richardson in the 4th or 5th round of your startup. But it's a risk that I'm willing to take, because if the gamble pays off, if he does figure it out, he's already shown the upside that he possesses. And I know we're talking Superflex, but if you're in a 1 quarterback league, I love the idea of drafting Richardson even more, because in 1 quarterback leagues, I'm punting the position anyway. And so it's much less risk. If he does hit, great. If not, I'll find somebody else. It's not that big of a deal. But yeah, the upside is just, it's too good for me to pass up. And I know that it might seem crazy, but at his ADP, I'm still drafting Richardson again this year.
Yeah, I love it. Robert jumping in says he thinks the Richardson experience is over.
I get it, Robert. I get it.
Drew, I'm with you. I understand.
It seems like you're the only one. Philip got a yikes in here too.
I understand all the hate.
I get it too. I do.
I understand all the hate. I understand everybody's like, oh man, this is terrible. I mean, this is a guy who literally, I mean, we've got quarterbacks coming in as rookies who have started 40 more games than Anthony Richardson started his entire career. Like, it's crazy. I mean, this guy is so young. He's so young. He has so much time. I mean, we're all of a sudden ignoring that guys are like 24 coming into the NFL. And like, oh, it's fine. It's fine. It's like, and we're ready to cast off Anthony Richardson at 22? Is he going to be 22 this year at the start of the season? Like, it's insane. The guy has so many years. Like, I understand it's ugly right now. I absolutely understand that. But dude, we just saw Sam Darnold, who everyone was like, this guy's garbage. I've been saying it for 3 years. I'm another one of those. I was like, Sam Darnold is not bad. I was like, if he was actually on a good team, he would be good. And people were like, dude, you're full of it. Like, he's terrible. I'm like, he's not. And he's young. He's 27. I know it feels like Sam Darnold's been in the league for 800 years. He's 27.
Yeah.
Like, Anthony Richardson can grow. Is he going to be awesome next year? I'm not saying that. But we're just going to give up on a guy that's this talented, like this young, this early in his career. To me, it blows my mind. I understand Colts want to win now. I always have to throw out this tag because I'm a Colts season ticket holder. I have been for over 15 years. So, like, yes, I'm a Colts fan. But I would rather lose and not make the playoffs and let him play all year and win 5 games than like mix in a Gardner Minshew and a Joe Flacco and go 9-8 and just barely miss the playoffs.
Yep.
I'd rather lose more games and have him play the whole time, knowing that we're working towards something. Personally, fantasy wise, I'm on the same boat with you. Anthony Richardson was a late first round, early second round startup pick last year. If you're getting him anywhere between 5 and 7, to me, it's worth a risk.
That's where I'm at.
Now,
too.
could it be a disaster? Could he fall apart this year and completely be garbage and be gone? Yes, but that's the risk reward.
That's the risk you take. Yeah,
I'm in. If he's 5 to 7 in a startup, and he's my QB2 or my QB3 even at that point.
It could be even QB3 at that point. If you're talking about the 7th round, it could be realistic that could be your third quarterback.
Absolutely. I'm all over that. I'm all over that value. And like you said, 1 QB leagues, sign me up. Sign me up.
Yeah, the risk just isn't there.
I mean, I'll take him and Matt Stafford. I don't care in a 1 QB league. You know what I mean? I'll just wait 100%. Forever and then take him. I mean, I know the hate's out there. I know, but here's the thing is, I don't know how many people legitimately go back and watch Colts games other than just random highlights. I'm telling you right now, Anthony Richardson's way better than his stats are. I mean, he's just better. He's just better.
I mean, he's not going to be a 70% completion percentage type of guy, but
he's a 1970s, 1980s QB. He's a 1970s, 1980s QB who can run. He's going to chuck the ball deep downfield. They're going to play action. If he completes 58 to 60% of his passes, great. Honestly,
if he's sitting at the 60% mark, I'm thrilled.
Exactly. 58 to 60% is great because he's going to chuck the ball downfield. He's going to play deep ball. He's not a dump off guy. I mean, there's a million guys with good percentages, but they just drop it to the running back all the time. People are like, well, he's not good at doing that. I'm like, well, okay. I'd rather have my guy be really good at throwing 50-yard passes than my guy being really good at throwing 2-yard dump off passes. Because all that is like, okay, I dump it off for 2 yards on 3rd and 8, and we get 2. Oh, my percentage is great. That doesn't help my team at all.
Yeah.
And again, I like the wide receiver core for the Colts, but they didn't help them a lot last year. They did not help him a lot last year. There was a lot of drops.
Mm-hmm.
There was a lot of plays where he could have had easily multiple more touchdowns per game, where guys like literally got tackled on the one or like dove and didn't score. Like on the one, there was a couple other plays. There was a lot of plays where guys did not adjust back to the ball for him. Now, was he super accurate? No, he missed passes. There's guys that were open, he missed. We all know that. But in primetime situations down the stretch, he made some great drives at the end of the year. I mean, some great drives in games at the end of the year. I know the stats aren't great. I know it got ugly at times, but dude, this guy has started on 25 games in his life. It's like less than 40 games from high school to the pros. He hasn't even started 40 freaking games. It's insane. You just cannot give up on the upside. So I know we got crazy into this. Everybody love him,
so, but Robert, would you rather have Richardson or an early second? I think if you're not a Richardson believer like me, I think an early second in this class is a good price to move off of him. You're probably going to get a really solid running back at that point. I don't think you're not going to be able to replace him with another quarterback there, most likely.
Not unless you're getting like maybe dart drops in your league.
But
you can maybe get Dart, but that's it.
Draft capital, he's not going to be there anymore. Like right now, if you're drafting, you could get Dart there. But if he ends up getting, top 15 draft capital, top 20 draft capital, like he's steaming up to get, he's not going to be there at the early second. But if you don't need a quarterback, like if you're not trading the pick in hopes of you're going to be able to reset and re-roll a quarterback, and you're fine with taking a running back or something like that, I think an early second is a fair price to move off of Richardson. Me personally, I'm going down with the ship. I'm not moving off of Richardson for an early second. I'm going to I'm going to either watch it burn or I'm going to watch my money stack up because of the investment that I made. But yeah, to Jorge's point, that's kind of the whole thing with Richardson right now is his price isn't inflated anymore. The injuries have been there. The production hasn't been great, and so his price is finally starting to drop. And I'm willing to reinvest now at the price that he's at. And Robert, to your point, he hasn't been able to stay healthy. But the thing with guys being injury prone is people are injury prone until they're not injury prone anymore. Like it's just the reality of it. Look at Christian McCaffrey. Like he's been injury prone. And then he's fine, and he's a fantasy monster. Not to say that Anthony Richardson is going to be the CMC of quarterbacks or anything like that, but it's just I just don't like the injury prone label. They play football. Like guys are going to get hurt, and the injuries are unpredictable, and so that's just something that it might be bad process, but that's something that I personally just ignore. Like I don't, unless a guy is coming into the season with an injury, like we know, like he's not fully healed from his injury, something like that. If he's coming into the season with an injury and he's going to need to recover during the season, I don't want to invest in those guys. But if somebody's coming into the offseason with a clean bill of health, he's taking part in training camp, he's fully healthy coming into the year, I personally don't care about your previous injury history. Like it's football. It comes with the territory. That's just how I approach it. But the real Rob Thomas is indeed in the chat. He said no, but Rob, you might not be the famous Rob Thomas, but to us, you are the famous Rob Thomas because you are the fantasy and frame supporter.
He's our Rob Thomas. That's all that matters.
You're our Rob Thomas. And Philip V, quarterback 3 sounds good. Yeah, if you can get him as your QB3, I like that. But Philip, we appreciate you hopping in the chat and hanging out as well. But yeah, I don't know.
Drew, I agree.
It's a toughie subject. So
I agree that I'm 100% with you on this. If you're still in on Richardson, you still think he's got upside, now's the buy time.
Yeah.
If you're out on Richardson, and I'm not going to fault you for being out on him.
No.
If you're out on him, sell him. Sell him now. You could probably get an early second. Maybe if you're somebody like me who absolutely is still in on Richardson and you offer me like, hey, man, sell me your 110 or 112 for Anthony Richardson, I'm probably doing it. I will probably sell it to you for that because I'm a sucker and I like Anthony Richardson. I like the Colts. So like I would probably do it. So again, if you pick a side, if you still think he's good or willing to take the risk, go buy him right now. Here's the same thing for me. Justin Fields last off season. If you still thought You believed in Justin Fields. You went and bought him. I bought him everywhere because I still believe in Justin Fields. If somebody gives him a shot. But if you don't like him at all, you got to sell him now before it's too late. So if you're out on Anthony Richardson, if you really think you're out on him, do not hope he has a good start of the season and then you can sell him higher. Just sell him now.
Yeah. If you're out on Richardson and you can get a second round pick like Rob is suggesting, take it. Yep. In this class, I think that's a fair value if you're out on him. But I still believe, man. But enough about Richardson. I know you have another quarterback.
We'll get on next guy. I'm gonna say an equally a guy that most people just hate and can't get on. I love T-Law still. I don't care. Trevor Lawrence, I'm still in on him. Here's the deal with Trevor Lawrence. He's another guy that if you look at his stats and the way he's played, his fantasy stats and his actual on the field play is way better than people give him credit for. The problem was the expectations was he was going to be the next great one. He was immediately going to come in, be Joe Montana, he's going to be Peyton Manning. Everyone freaking out. The guy is still young. He's had maybe one of the worst situations franchise-wise, coaching-wise.
Yeah.
Any player ever. I mean, he's still only 25 years old. He's going to be 26 during the season. 26, guys. I mean, he's only going to be 26. Let me run through a few stats. And these are terrible Jags teams, remind you. And he took them to the playoffs one year. Rookie year, 17 games, just under 60% passing, 3,600 yards, 12 touchdowns, 17 picks. Not a great season. Horrible team. One of the worst situations ever. Turns around the next year, 66%, 4,100 yards, 25 TDs, 8 picks. All right, now we see it. That's the guy we're expecting, okay? Next year, 65%, 4,000 yards, 21 touchdowns, but the picks go up to 14. Very consistent, very in line. Then last year, only plays 10 games, injuries. He also fought through injuries in 2023. You saw it. If you watch his games at all, he was floating passes that he never floats. He was injured, like he was playing through hurt. 60%, 2,000 yards in 10 games. 11 touchdowns, 7 picks. They're going to put guys around him. Also, he can run. Yep, I know people, they're like, what are you talking about? 334 yards rushing and 2 touchdowns as a rookie. 291 yards rushing, 5 touchdowns his second year. 339 and 4 touchdowns his third year. And last year in only 10 games had 119 and 3 touchdowns. I'm telling you, everyone's out on T-Law too early. Like, we got BTJ. He didn't even get full-on blown up awesome BTJ. He got Brian Thomas Jr. early, and then Brian Thomas Jr. blew up with Mac Jones once T-Law was hurt.
Yeah.
Now, you get them another quality wide receiver in this draft. I'm liking it, man. T-Law is going to come back. New coach. They're ready to go. New setup. I know the press conference was awkward as could possibly be with the Duval. Like, it was really awkward, guys.
Here lately, awkward press conferences has correlated pretty well for success for head coaches. So
exactly.
I don't care.
You don't have to be the cool guy. Weird guys are really good at coaching. They're like the dorks in the corner who watching
Nerds
film all the time. Those
baby.
Guys are awesome at it. There's a reason why the superstars almost never make good coaches, and the guys that like barely made it always end up being really good coaches. There's a reason for that because they're the dorks in the corner studying film while the other guys are at the party picking up chicks. It's the way it is. So I think this is going to be huge for T-Law. He's going to get healthy in the offseason. When he got hurt and he took that massive hit and they just said, nope, you're out. We're going to get you surgery. Do it now. Best decision the Jags could have made. Yeah. Get him out now. Get him healthy. Take the surgery early. Give him plenty of time to heal for the next season. I'm telling you, T-Law's value has dropped so far. I'm a buyer everywhere. I did a startup mock the other day, and I don't know how far he would have fell. He got to me, and I was like, I couldn't even believe he got as far as I got him at the second to last pick in the 4th round in a super flex, and I was like, how far would he go if I didn't take him right now?
If you wouldn't have been the one, yeah.
If I wasn't the one that took him. And
right.
I was like, and I was thinking about taking him in the 2nd or 3rd round because I like T-Law. And I'm like, but I was like, you know what? I think everybody else is out on him. I think I can wait. And I just waited. And he got all the way to the end of the 4th round. And it's like, people are acting like he's dead. This guy's 25, former #1 pick. The hate has just gone way too far on T-Law.
It has. Yeah, I agree. To me, his rookie season never even happened in my mind. Like that Urban
was
Meyer
a disaster.
Fiasco, that to me, that never even happened. And then even the Doug Peterson thing, obviously it was an upgrade from Urban Meyer because a toddler could have came in and coached the Jags in his 2nd year and it would have been an upgrade from Urban Meyer. But like Doug Peterson, he wasn't necessarily with the times from an offensive standpoint. They were a very archaic offense. And so getting Liam Cohen in there, I like that. I like that a lot. And so, I know we're kind of backtracking just a little bit here, but Robert, I've still got Richardson slightly ahead of Darnold in my dynasty rankings. I at least know Richardson's going to come into the year as the starter. I don't know what's going to happen with Darnold. I do think the resurgence was real for Darnold, but I'm also a very, very, very big proponent of whenever it comes to quarterbacks, situation matters, coaching matters, the players around you matter, and we don't. I find it hard to believe he's going to find a situation better than being coached by Kevin O'Connell and being able to throw to Jordan Addison and Justin Jefferson and TJ Hawkinson and those guys. I don't know. I don't know how you can go up from there. And so I do have question marks about what the future looks like for Darnold. So I'm personally still taking Richardson. If you don't believe in Richardson, there would be no reason for you to do that. At that point, I think you would go Darnold. But getting back off of the Richardson stuff, we got a question from Jorge related to Trevor Lawrence. So would you be comfortable with him as your QB1, or are you just talking about like, hey, I've already got my QB1, and then 4th round, I'm going to circle back and take Trevor Lawrence as my QB2?
So at this point, if everybody in my Superflex startup league is going QB early, and I like T-Law, and I like Anthony Richardson, and I like Darnold, 3 guys I do like, all undervalued right now, I'm going to load up on wideouts. I'm going to lower if I can get Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, CeeDee Lamb, Brian Thomas, Neighbors, Marvin Harrison. Give me those guys the first couple rounds, and then I'm going to wait, and I'm going to take T-Law. I'm going to take AR. I'm going to maybe throw in a Stafford or a Darnold, especially depending on where your startup is. I'm like you. I'm a little iffy on Darnold, even though I actually like Darnold a ton. Minnesota was the perfect spot for him. It was perfect with the whole lineup and the coaching staff. It was perfect for him. So now I'm worried about him because I still like him, but I'm real nervous about what the situation is going to be next year. I think he starts somewhere.
Yeah, he should be a starter somewhere.
But there's a lot of bad situations in the league. If he ends up somewhere not ideal, I could be definitely way farther down on Darnold. So for me, if I'm eyeing T-Law, especially if I'm drafting at the end of my startup, is what I'm going to tell you. If I'm drafting the end of my startup and everyone goes QB in front of me, and then people are down on T-Law, then I could go T-Ball. I would take T-Law as my QB1. If I can get him in the 3rd or 4th round as my QB1, and I can load up on like I said, those top wide receivers, or even like a JT or a Barkley or somebody, a running back in the 3rd, and then get T-Law in the 4th, I'm on that. I'm all over that. To me, that's a different strategy, but one I would do.
Yeah. So sticking with T-Law and the Jacksonville Jaguars, which sophomore receiver would you rather have in Dynasty given the quarterback situations, Neighbors or Brian Thomas Jr.?
That's a tough one. I will be honest. I sold a BTJ early in the year, and I didn't want to do it. And everyone told me, like, you got to do it. It was a multiple player deal with Puka involved. And I love Puka, but I was like, man, I just love BTJ so much. And everyone's like, no, value. You got to take the value. Puka's the value deal. And I'm like, I accepted it. Dude, it was like one of the hardest accept trades of my life.
Yeah.
And everyone told me I was winning the trade, and I still didn't want to do it.
Right.
I just think I think he's got a shot to be just unbelievable. Now, with that said, I love Neighbors.
Yeah.
I've got Neighbors ahead of him right now.
I do too.
I think you got to go Neighbors.
Yeah.
I think I love BTJ. I think you got to go Neighbors in this situation, even with just the horrific quarterback play for the Giants.
I mean, the horrific quarterback play led him to being the wide receiver 6 at PPR points per game.
It's insane. And he missed, 2 games?
Yeah. And points per game, wide receiver 6. Like, and he's an elite target earner that can make things happen on his own if you just get the ball in his hands.
Well, and he's proven if his team's terrible, right, they can still force the ball to him and he'll make plays. Yeah. Like, he's not one of those guys like, oh, he's got to have the right situation to be good. We've seen him. He can be the only guy on the team. And he's still going to perform, even if they're putting everyone on him.
His rookie year could very, very well be the worst situation that he finds himself in, and he turned it into the wide receiver 6. Yeah. For me, Neighbors, I like Neighbors more as a prospect, and he had the better overall rookie season whenever you look at points per game. So as much as I like BTJ, and I only have BTJ 3 spots lower. I've got him as my wide receiver 8. I've got Neighbors.
They're right there.
5.
So they're right there. I'm the same thing. I have them right next to each other, but I got Neighbors a little ahead of BTJ still, even though I love BTJ. Like, I'm still never going to recover from trading him in a couple of leagues, even though I really didn't want to. And people talked me into it. It was early in the season before he blew up. They're like, "Oh, you got to take Puka." I mean, and I was just like, right. BTJ is going to be awesome, and people were just, So don't sell too early, folks. Don't sell too early. That's the little moral of that story. Oh man, we're flying along here. We're at 50 minutes. We're gonna go a little long tonight, Drew. If you're okay
with that. I'm good with that.
We don't have any other shows going on tonight, so we're gonna run a little long. Let's jump in.
We're the captain now.
Let's jump into running backs. Who outside of the top 12 is a guy you're looking at thinking you could maybe snag in a startup, and you're just like, I got my eye on this guy. I'm looking for him. I'm trying to figure out what round I want to take him in, but I like him because I don't have to take him right up top.
I need to start this out with a caveat that it's really hard for me to advocate for buying any running backs this offseason outside of like the top 4 or 5 guys at the position, just because of how loaded this rookie class looks like it's going to be in the draft capital. I think a lot of these guys are going to get. Like, I think that we are going to look at a lot of these running back rooms very, very differently here in a few months once the NFL draft is over, especially after the first 2 rounds. But at the end of the day, if you're going to start up right now, you got to draft somebody. So the reality is, new head coach Liam Cohen that we already talked about with the Jacksonville Jaguars, he didn't draft either Etienne or Tank Bigsby, which is why I'm kind of nervous that they're going to end up getting replaced, and he's going to be looking for his next Bucky Irving in this year's draft. But if Etienne somehow survives the NFL draft, I do like the possibility of him being the lead back for Liam Cohen's offense. Now, there's no denying that it was a down year for him as a rusher. Tank Bigsby was the better runner last year, but Etienne still offers more in the passing game. He outpaced Bigsby in yards per route run, targets per route run, first downs per route run, which in PPR leagues, obviously we care about the pass catching ability, right? And so and before the disappointing year last year as a runner, he was over 1,000 rushing yards for 2 straight years. So it's not like the guys just can't run the ball. I mean, I don't think he's Rashad White, but according to January DLF startup ADP, Etienne is going off the board as the running back 27. He's just ahead of James Conner, which after the contract extension he got, I'd probably go Conner over Etienne, especially if I'm trying to win now, which I honestly I think Etienne's at the point in his career where if you're taking him, you're probably looking at him and Conner in the same light, even though Conner's a little bit older. Like, it's not like Etienne is really the fountain of youth, but he's ahead of Zach Charbonnet, who's obviously behind Kenneth Walker. He's ahead of Jalen Warren, who is a free agent. Well, we don't even know where he's going to be playing. And so I've got him at running back 24 in my personal dynasty ranking, so slightly ahead of a couple of those guys. But I think it's worth mentioning that the Jags picked up his fifth-year option last year, so they're paying him over $6 million this year, and it has never been more difficult for a running back to earn a second contract. So you got to think he's going to do everything possible to make an impact this year to try to get paid next offseason whenever he's a free agent for the first time in his career. But it comes down to the fact that it seems like Liam Cohen, he wants to use one guy if he can trust one guy. I think it's going to be like not completely, like not like a 90%, not like a 90-10 split, something like that. But like we saw down the stretch that once Bucky Irving made it clear he was the best running back on the team, he was handling a lot of the touches. It took him a while to get there. It was a 50-50 split even toward the middle of the year, but then toward the end of the year, it was very clear that Bucky was the guy. And with the rushing ability he showed early in his career, and just the fact that he's a clear, better pass catching option than Tank Bigsby, if they don't add a running back to this room, I think that he's the best bet to be the lead back. I think it'll probably be like a 60-40 split, 65-35 at best. So it's not that I think that he's going to completely take over the backfield again. I still think that Bigsby's going to get some carries. He's still going to get some goal line work. But I think that at running back 27 prices, if you've taken a running back early, you can get him as your running back 2 in like rounds 8, 9, something like that. I think that it's an investment worth making, but this entire segment is going to be completely meaningless once the Jags draft Caleb Johnson or Quishon Junkins in the second round and just completely nukes the value of all these guys. But we got to draft somebody right now. So yeah. I've been a big ETN guy dating back to his time at Clemson. He was my running back 1 in that class between him and Najee. He's a guy that I've liked a lot. So it's one more chance to double down before his time is completely nuked.
Yeah, if you're doing the startup pre-draft, it is tough. But I agree with you. Etienne's a guy I liked a lot. I think I could really see him having a resurgence here with a new coaching staff, give him a new shot. He feels like he has the makeup that they like at running back. I don't know why the Jags completely went away from him last year at the end of the year. I think he's worth a guy worth a shot taking him with the drop off, just because he's got so much cheaper. The buy now window for him is great. For me, a guy you just kind of mentioned. If you're looking at points total outside of last year, guys that finished outside the top 12, a guy I really like is Kenneth Walker. He finished 16th in points per game at 12.3 on Fantasy Pros. Now, per DLF, right now, he's number 10 running back as far as the guys getting drafted. If he falls in your league, if he falls in your drafts, Kenny Walker's a guy I want. There's some people were really high on him 2 years ago. Kind of fell off with the injuries last year. You know how it is in fantasy, especially in Dynasty. Guy gets hurt, misses a couple games. Everybody just throws him to the wind. They're like, I'm out on him. He's dead. Yeah. Kenny Walker, if he drops in your draft, he's a guy I like. Now, I'm going to mention, I know we talked about one guy. I'm going to mention 2 other guys real quick. Another guy I still think has legs and is getting ignored is David Montgomery. Everyone saw the Jahmyr Gibbs blow up at the end of the year. David Montgomery still has value. He's still going to be good. I love David Montgomery. He is falling in drafts. I love him in a startup draft. You can get him at such a good price right now because everybody's on Gibbs. Everybody's taking Gibbs. He's number 1 or number 2 running back off the board in startups. So people are down on Gibbs or down on Montgomery. Monty's not going away. He's not just gonna disappear. So if you can get Monty as your RB2, I love it. I have him as my RB2 in a ton of leagues. He also was banged up a little bit last year, so he missed some games. Another knock on him as far as people are concerned in drafting. So I like him. A guy I want to keep my eye on. Very tough to draft right now because you have no idea the situation. But if you're in a startup that's going to go after the NFL draft, I want to see where Najee Harris ends up. Najee gets a ton of hate from everybody. Just an absolute ton of hate. As a person who grew up as a Steelers fan and still a Steelers fan number 1 before I'm a Colts fan, I watched a ton of Najee. Man, he is a lot better than people give him credit for. He has not had good O-line play at all. He has gotten hit behind the line a ton and had to make plays happen. He has more 4-yard runs that should have been 2-yard losses than anybody in the league. I mean, it's crazy. And now, does he have the breakaway speed? Is he going to get you a 60-yarder? No. Is he going to get you a 40-yarder? No. Can he get you a 20-yarder? He can get you a couple 20-yarders a season, but he's not. That's where he's at. But he is a solid guy who gets yards and runs hard, and he's actually one of those guys that gets better as the game goes on. Mm-hmm. He did it last year. So when Steelers were up in games, if you go back and watch games where Steelers were up and he got touches in the second half, he got better and better and better as the game went on. Where he fell apart was games they got down, they just abandoned.
Yeah, that's
he just got no freaking touches. Jaylen Warren played the entire second half because they were in basically third down passing mode the whole second half, and Jaylen Warren was in the game. Now, I like Jaylen Warren. Very different players, though. So I think Najee, if he lands in a good situation where he can be the number one guy and they're basically going to lean on him, and he's going to be on a team that can be in games where they can use him the whole game, I like Najee. I just think he's going to be a very nice value. He's going to fall way farther down in drafts than people think. So if you're going to start up now, he's going to fall way down because people are so nervous about it.
Especially if your league mates think he's Alexander Madison.
Yeah, there you go. Exactly. Hey, put him on the Raiders right now. Najee would crush on the Raiders, by the way. If you were in a startup right now, I would absolutely be eyeing Najee. Now, would I take him very high? Not at all, because it's a very you have no idea where he's going to end up. Is he going to end up on a team with a rookie who he's splitting carries with or fighting for a starting spot? But if he just keeps dropping and dropping in your draft, and all of a sudden you're in round 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and Najee's still out there, to me, he's worth a shot. Now, I would love to wait and see where he lands, obviously, but if you had to do it now, anytime before the draft, he's a guy I want to keep an eye on as a late round flyer, because you got to assume most people are just going to be out, having no idea where he's going to go. Yeah. And most people don't like him anyway. So to me, he's a cheap guy in a startup that I want to keep an eye on, because again, where I'm getting him, if he ends up bombing and end up being a backup or, in a timeshare with somebody,
it doesn't really
you're not going to get crushed by it in your startup.
Right. Yep. Before we move off of running backs, this is a really good question and an interesting couple of guys that are very interesting. Sophomore running backs. Blake Corum with the Los Angeles Rams setting behind Kyren Williams. Trey Benson with the Arizona Cardinals setting behind James Conner, who we talked about a little bit. Blake Corum, he was always a weird one for me whenever the Rams drafted him, because he's almost a clone of Kyren Williams. They're so similar players. They're decent in the pass blocking game. They're solid runners, but they're not explosive. They're not going to give you big plays, but they can pick up the chunk yards. And everything that Kyren Williams has been at the NFL level is basically what Blake Corum was at the college level. And so there's no, they don't complement each other. There is no Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery here. It's just having two David Montgomerys, but neither one of them are David Montgomery.
Yeah, this is the perfect handcuff. You know what I mean?
He is a handcuff.
If you have Williams, you want Blake Corum, because if he goes out, you're getting the exact same guy. You're getting the exact same guy. But Corum is unplayable if Kyren Williams is playing. You know what I mean? So, he's the handcuff if you have him, but he's a guy you don't want on your team unless you have Kyren Williams, because you're just going to sit on your bench and you're never going to be able to use him unless he gets hurt. So that one's a wild one. Now, Trey Benson, this one's a crazy one for me, because Trey Benson was my RB1 last year coming into the draft. He still would be my RB1. Now, I've had a lot of people ask, where would you rate him if it was this draft class? He falls for me. Now, he was my RB1 straight up, but in this draft class,
he'd be lucky to be running back 7 7 or 8.
7 or 8. I agree with you. I really think
he's definitely behind the top 5.
He's definitely behind the top
easily.
5. I like Devin Neal a ton, and to me, he would be like he would be right next to or right behind Devin Neal. Personally, for me, I think they're like right next to each other. So I agree with you. I think he's like somewhere between RB 6 and 8 if he came out this year.
And he was paid James Conner. Like, they just gave him an extension.
And that's the big issue. Anyone who took him last year, and I said when I was telling people he was my RB1 to take him, I said, if you're expecting anything out of him this year, you're going to get nothing his rookie year unless Connor gets hurt, which of course he didn't.
Right. Yeah.
For once.
The plan was he didn't draft Trey Benson. Yeah. The plan was you draft Trey Benson. He's got Connor in front of him. Worst case scenario, Connor plays the whole season, but hey, after this season, he's gone. You know, like that they're going to move on from him. They're going to give the backfield to Trey Benson, and then lo and behold, they give the guy a damn extension. And
dude, that blew my mind.
It's basically a 1-year deal.
Like
it's pretty much it's like a $2 million dead cap hit after 2026 if they decide to move on. Or after 2025, rather, if they decide to move on. So, maybe it ends up being a 2-year deal. It could end up just being a 1-year deal. Like I think it's going to with the out that they have, the cap savings they could have. I find it hard to believe they're going to bring it back in 2026 for his age 31 season. But Connor's not going away this year. Like neither one of these guys, Blake Corum or Trey Benson, have a clear path to touches this year unless the guy in front of them gets hurt. So to me, both of these guys are just handcuffs. And
they're nice buys. They're nice buys.
Yeah, sure,
because they both have cheap enough because if people are out on them. But you're right. I mean, you're unless injuries. I mean, we thought Benson might have a shot this year. I kid you. We're literally Groundhog's Day. We're Groundhog's Day.
All over again.
It's the same year over again. Okay, he's gonna sit there, and if he gets hurt, maybe he gets playing time, and we're waiting another year.
Yeah,
it's exactly the same thing.
He's a guy. He's a guy that as soon as the James Conner extension gets announced, like I'm trying to go buy him then and hopefully get a discount on him, and just and not that I'm rooting for somebody to get injured, but in the event Conner does get hurt, then I could reap the benefits. But another guy that I think is really interesting that I liked a decent amount, but they have Josh Jacobs sitting there. It's another one that got day 2 draft capital, Marshawn Lloyd out of USC. We never really got to see what he was just because he spent the whole year, it seemed like, getting banged up, so like
he was hurt all year. I think he had I don't even know what this, I could look it up, but he had like less than 15 touches this year.
But I mean, Matt LaFleur has never been a guy to just give the entire workload to one player. He basically had to last year because of all the injuries that the backups kept dealing with. And there comes a point you get far enough along in the depth chart that like they might technically be the next man up, but you're not going to give them any considerable work because like you get far enough along, they're not going to be an impact player. But I think that Marshawn Lloyd could. I don't think Josh Jacobs will have the same work. He'll still be the main guy, but if Marshawn Lloyd is healthy, I think that he'll play more snaps than the backups were behind Marshawn Lloyd whenever he was injured. But he's still probably, he's still just a handcuff, right?
Yeah, he is right now. Now Marshawn Lloyd might be the best buy now of all these second-year guys because he was literally non-existent and hurt, which means he just goes off everyone's radar.
Yeah,
but if you look at carries last year, now say he's not hurt and you add up the backup carries last year. So Josh Jacobs 301 carries, 300 carries for Josh Jacobs. I was shocked. I was shocked he got 300 carries. Like if you would have went in the year, be like Josh Jacobs is going to have 300 carries, 1,300 yards, and 15 TDs. I was like, you're full of it. I'd have been like, give me the under for like $1 million.
Everything. Yeah.
Like there's like no way. So I mean, he had an unreal season. Great for Josh Jacobs. I did not see that coming. So the backups behind him. Now think about this. This is with a fully healthy playing 17 games, 300 carry Josh Jacobs. Behind him, Emmanuel Wilson. Who's Emmanuel Wilson? Emmanuel Wilson. 103 carries, 502 yards on the year. 4 touchdowns. The backup. Then you get Brooks got another 36 carries for 100 yards. A couple of the wideouts mixed in. I lied. I overshot Lloyd's touches. he played 1 game, 6 carries, 15 yards. I said he had less than 15. He had 6 carries all the year. So you give him Brooks and Wilson's touches. That's 140, almost 140 touches for almost 700 yards and 5 touchdowns.
I think he's better than all those guys behind him. Like he's probably going to do more with those touches than what Wilson.
Exactly. And then you got to think Jacobs is going to not match that. There's no way he matches that again, right? Like even if he has
he seems like he's primed for regression.
Yeah. So even if he has a little, like say he still has a good year, but he has a little bit regression. Like say it's 150-yard regression. So he runs for 1150 instead of 1300, and drops off like 25, 30 carries, and you give that to Lloyd. Lloyd's now looking at like 175 carries to 200 for easily 700-800 yards, maybe 7-8 touchdowns. And that's if Jacobs plays the whole year. I'm telling you, man, I'm buying Marshawn Lloyd. I am, because if he's cheap, or like if somebody else is out on him, I mean, he was a mid-second last year, and there was a lot of people who were real iffy about taking a mid-second, but needed an RB, so they just took him. I think he's a prime buy now. Phil V, good call, man. I think he's a prime buy now, candidate. If you look at what Jacobs did, and again, everybody talks about Jordan Love, they talk about the wide receivers. The Packers are a run-first team, people. They're a run-first team. And that means both running backs are going to be carries.
Jaden Reed led the team in targets, and I think he was like he was 55th or 52nd in the league in targets among receivers, and he was the target leader for the Packers. Yeah, we got a couple questions that are just perfectly geared for your fandom. So first up with Jorge, neither one of them are Steelers, at least at the moment, but with both of them being free agents, Najee Harris, Jaylen Warren, do you have a preference in a startup?
I think I might be wrong that I think Jalen's got 1 year left on his deal. I think he's actually on. I think he's actually on. He's one of the few guys on the Steelers under contract. Jalen's on the team. Now, here's the issue with Jalen is they're going to draft a running back. There's just no doubt. Letting Najee go, they're going to drive right. But here's what I would probably right now, not knowing where Najee's going, I'm taking Warren over him in a startup, because even if the Steelers, just throwing this out there, say the Steelers draft Caleb Johnson in the second or Quinshon Judkins in the third, Jaylen Warren's still going to play his snaps. He's still going to do what Jaylen Warren does.
Right. Yeah.
So I feel good. See, I'm a weirdo because I like Jaylen Warren. I don't think Jaylen Warren's the full-time starter. That's not his game.
Just real quick to your point.
Jump in.
He's a restricted free agent, but the Steelers GM said that he's going to receive a restricted free agent tender, and so he'll likely be with the team in 2025.
Okay.
So
I thought there was a good chance he was still going to be there. I knew Najee was gone because they did not take his 5th-year contract, and they didn't offer him an extension. So I think to me, I'm taking Jaylen Warren over Najee, even though I like Najee more as a player, not knowing where Najee's going to land. To me, you got to take Warren over him in a startup right now, which is why I said Najee for the price. I think he drops drastically in startup price from last year to this year, and so I like him as a flyer late.
Yeah, and I mean, it's Robert. It's fair to be out on Steelers running backs, and for now, whenever it comes to running backs, if I ever have questions, I have a pretty simple philosophy. I want running backs that are in a starting role on a good offense. It's not rocket science to me. Like running backs that are in good offenses on good teams that are winning the game more often. That means you're going to get more carries because teams want to run out the clock. It's not like this isn't galaxy brain stuff. And so, the Steelers we don't know what their quarterback situation is going to look like. We don't know what the offense is going to look like. It's an offense full of question marks and George Pickens and Jaylen Warren. And so it's like, Rob, I can't blame you if you want to be out on them.
I tell you what, as a Steelers fan, and I own an ungodly amount of Steelers players in all my fantasy leagues because I'm that type of person. It's gonna be real difficult to take Steelers in a startup this year. Like anyone. I mean, I love George Pickens, and I'm like, I'm definitely drafting him 2 to 3 rounds later than I did last year.
I mean,
just because you just don't know what's going on there. I mean, you have they don't have a quarterback yet. I think Justin Fields should be the guy. That's me personally. I think Justin Fields should be like an Anthony Richardson. You should give him one whole year, no matter how bad he plays in any one game. You let him play all year, unless they're hurt. You let him play a whole season and see what he's got.
Yeah, worst case
scenario. And if he doesn't, then you move on. Yeah, he sucks, and you get a higher draft pick, and you move on. But he should get one whole year and see what happens. But until that happens, you can't trust anything going on there. You just can't. I mean, I like Pat Freiermuth, but again, he's another guy. I'm like, who's going to be there? What they can do? It's a very, very iffy situation in Pittsburgh. And as someone who, like I said, who owns way too many Pittsburgh players, I'm real nervous because when Pittsburgh's offense sucks, my fantasy teams usually suck because I have way too many Steelers players on my team.
Bouncing to your other team, any concerns with Jonathan Taylor with the Colts bringing in some running back competition?
They got to bring another running back. That doesn't hurt JT at all. They got to have another running back.
Yeah,
they have to. I tell you what, man, I felt like they missed on some really golden opportunities the last 2 drafts to take some running backs that fell that could have been really nice for them. They've got to get a better backup for JT. I don't care who they take. He's not stealing JT's job. JT is still a top 5 running back in the league. I don't care who you are.
Follow, even if you have doubts about his ability, just follow the money. They just gave him the bag.
There's just no reason. He's going to be the guy. So I love JT. Take JT with confidence in my mind. I actually think everybody's like, oh, they can't throw the ball. It hurts JT. I'm like, actually, I don't think it hurts him that much because the play action with him throwing deep and an AR's running ability helps JT. Personally, I think. So I'm in on JT. I'm buying the dip for people that are out on him because everyone's hating the Colts offense because they are good. Give him to me. I mean, I'm going to bring up another player in our next segment. We're talking about wide receivers. That's the guy I'm going to buy because everybody hates AR. So we didn't mean to turn this into a Colts show, but this is what we're doing. But this is the year. If the Colts have to take a running back, have to take a younger backup running back. I'll tell you what, right now, I'm gonna throw it out there. I know it's not gonna happen because it would be too perfect. I think the Colts should take LaQuinn Allen out of Syracuse. If they get him in the 4th or 5th round, I think it would be an absolute freaking steal. He is a great wide receiver out of the backfield. He would be a really, really nice compliment to JT. He's young.
Yeah.
He's 20. I mean, one of the youngest players in the entire draft, was super, super successful at Syracuse, ran for 1,000 yards, really good receiver. They brought him out of the backfield, ran everything. I think LaQuinn Allen would be an absolute – I think he is Deion Hines, but better. I think he's a better Deion Hines.
What about Rashad Smith?
Ooh, that's a sneaky one too. I do like that.
I like his fit with the Colts.
I always forget about him in this running back class. I'm not going to lie.
He's the Antonio Gibson of this class.
He is. I think he would be a really nice fit here for them too. Goodson's just not good. I hate to say that. He's just not very good. And then why am I blanking on? Oh my God. I have so much of him. Why am I blanking on him? Who was their backup last year? Former Oklahoma Iowa State running back. Why can I not remember his name?
I don't know. I'm going blank too.
I'm looking it up right now.
You have to look it up. You have to
look it up. Saying that I just blanked on this. I can't believe I just blanked on this.
While you're looking that up, we have one more running back.
Trey Sermon. Trey Sermon.
Yeah, Trey Sermon.
Trey Sermon is just
the Ohio State.
I wasted a bunch of second-round picks on Trey Sermon in fantasy drafts. You got to get it somebody better, and this is the perfect draft to get someone.
All right, what would you give up or accept for Jaylen Warren if you were looking to move off of him? I think if I can get any 3rd-round pick for him, I'm doing that in a heartbeat. Personally, just talking about rookie drafts. Yeah, that's kind of what I'm looking at. Anything beyond that, I'm probably just going to hold Jaylen Warren and see what happens with the Steelers backfield. But if I can get a third round pick in this class, I'll re-roll it running back with how good this class
would push for a mid-second to late
yeah.
second if I can get it.
Absolutely.
Even early third, I would consider, because I really do like this running back class, and I want to take as many swings.
Yeah, that's exactly
it. If I can get like 2 seconds in like an early third and just like take 3 running backs and hope one of them hits, that's what I want to do. So I like Warren. I think he's a solid play. He's a flex play who's your RB2 on bye weeks and injuries. He's going to give you something. He's never going to blow up and win you a week, but he's going to give you something. If you can move him for like a mid second, I'd be all over. If I could take like a Devin Neal or somebody instead of him, I would do that. But yeah, I think that kind of in that mix.
Yeah, 100%. If I can get a second round pick for him, I'm doing flips. I'll still take a third too, but anything beyond once you get to the 4th round, beyond that, I'm
I'm keeping him. If I don't get at least the early to mid third, then I'm probably keeping him. Real quick before I was gonna let's keep it moving. Let's run a wide receiver. I was telling you this kind of transition here. The guy I'm looking at is Josh Downs from the Colts. I know I feel like we just turned this into a whole Colts podcast, but Josh Downs, man, you look at his numbers the last couple of years with just the most up and down quarterback play ever. And he's fought a couple injuries here and there. Ended the year, his rookie year, started the season this year. Guy's been nothing but solid. Every time he's in there, he's been good. He is sneakily the wide receiver 1 on this Colts team. I know Michael Pittman's out there, and I like Michael Pittman. I'm telling you right now, Josh Downs, when healthy, is wide receiver 1 for the Colts. He's great in the slot. Even it was like AR can't throw it medium or short. It doesn't matter. When AR was in there, he was good. When Flacco was in there, he was good. Josh Downs is, especially because the AR hate, is a buy right now. He's the buy. I mean, people aren't thinking about him. They're like, oh, AR can't throw the ball. He can't hit the broadside of a barn. Like, I don't want any Colts wide receiver. Like, Josh Downs is my guy. So startup drafts, dude, he is just getting lost in the mix. He's getting lost in the mix. I'm looking at ADP and I'm like searching, and I'm like going down the list and I'm like, oh, there's Josh Downs. I'm like, I would take him I'd take him before 15, 20 guys in front of him on the ADP list. Josh Downs is a buy for me. I think he's just going to get better. If the quarterback play improves at all, his numbers are going to be real nice. I know we've seen like the Malik Neighbors, the BTJs, the guys go off lately as rookies. And so it's kind of skewed everybody's idea of like what a good season is for players. But people got to forget, right? We've got Hall of Famers from the Colts. In 17 games, even though he was a little banged up as a rookie, 68 catches, 771 yards, 2 touchdowns. Very average QB play. 14 games last year, came in unhealthy. He was hurt in the preseason, hurt in training camp, basically missed all of training camp. Only played 14 games, got off to a slow start, ended up with 72 catches, 803 yards, and 5 touchdowns. He's averaging 70 catches, 800 yards, and 3.5 to 4 touchdowns in his first 2 seasons with very poor QB play. Josh Downs in a full season with even average quarterback play is 85 to 90 catches, over 1,000 yards, and 5 or 6 touchdowns.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, he led the team in receiving yards per game. And then if you take out the Anthony Gold outlier because he didn't play a lot of snaps, but if you take him out of the equation, he was also first in the team in yards per route run, targets per route run, first downs per route run. He led the team in the percentage of first read target share. They were drawing up plays for Josh Downs specifically. He is – I know Michael Pittman's the name. He's got the contract, everything like that. Josh Downs is the wide receiver 1 on this team. He's the best wide receiver on the field whenever the Colts offense is out there. I completely agree that he's one of those guys that you should be taking advantage of the Colts dip that's going on right now because of the question marks around their offense, because there are not question marks around if Josh Downs is good or not. That has been abundantly clear that the guy can ball. So, yeah, I
highly underrated, was an absolute monster steal in round 3 when they got him. I mean, you saw what Drake May did with him in college. I mean, it was just a beast. Before we get into your wide receiver you want to startups, let's answer Rob's question. Please convince me a Packers wide receiver is going to emerge as true number 1 in foreseeable future. Drew, can you convince him? Because I don't think I can convince him.
I got nothing for you, Rob. I said it earlier. I don't know the exact numbers, so I apologize, but you could fact check it pretty easily. Jaden Reed led the team in targets, and I think he was still he wasn't even in the top 50 in the NFL in terms of receivers with the amount of targets that he had. This team just does not have a wide receiver 1. They have a whole bunch of wide receiver 2 and wide receiver 3s, and then they got a couple good tight ends on top of that, and they want to run the ball. This is a team that I think that they could use. I think they would benefit from a go-to guy, a wide receiver 1, like not Devontae Adams now, but what Devontae Adams was to that offense in the past. They need something like that again. But right now, I don't think they have it, and there's really no convincing I can do.
I have seen a couple mock drafts, and people were like losing their mind. I've seen a couple mock drafts where they're taking a wide receiver fairly early, and people are like, "What? They got a million wide?" And they're like, "They don't have a wide receiver 1." They're like, "They don't have a wide receiver 1." So I did see a mock draft, and this irritated me as a Missouri fan. But they had Luther Burden going with the Packers, which wouldn't be a terrible landing spot. I just don't want to see him on the Packers. But
if one of Ted McMillan, Luther Burden, Emeka Egbuka lands in Green Bay, they immediately become the best receiver.
They become the best receiver, right? I agree with you. I think they become immediately the best receiver. And I like Jaden Reed. I do too. Jaden Reed is like your really great, like low end wide receiver 2, high end wide receiver 3. He's like that.
Yeah, he's gonna give you some spike weeks from time to time.
But and you're gonna love to play him in your flex play. But you don't ever want him to be your wide receiver 1 or 2 in your starting lineup. Like you're just like, because like you look, I guarantee you, when you hit him and you put him in that starting lineup in that spot, you're like, oh, you're praying.
Yeah,
like this week,
let this be the week that they
like this week where he gets the reverse and gets the touchdown. He also breaks off like a 50-yard pass. Because believe me, because I got him on a bunch of teams, and I do that every week when I put him in the lineup. I'm like, oh, I hope this is the week that he hits. So even though they have a lot of guys, I think we've seen Christian Watson he's just never going to be the guy. I mean, he's going to be your D threat. He's never going to be a guy. We
all want Dontavian Wicks to be that guy, but he's got to figure out what to do with his hands at some point, you know.
And then Romeo Doubs, I know, like we've seen good things out of him, but he's
the perfect example of like better for real football.
Yeah,
like he is a great NFL receiver. It doesn't necessarily translate to fantasy football, but he's a great NFL guy, you know. But it's just if he doesn't catch the touchdowns for fantasy, you don't care.
Yeah. Who do you got? Who's the wideout you want? Since I stole Josh Downs, because I knew you were going to say Josh Downs. So
I love Josh Downs. I love the call, but I didn't want to talk about too many Colts and take all of them away from you tonight. But to be honest with you, this is probably a pretty obvious one if you're paying any attention to the offseason news cycle. But Debo wants to trade from the 49ers, and they've given him permission to look for a fresh start. So next man up, Ricky Pearsall, come on down. Then you consider the fact that Brandon Ayuk, he's recovering from an ACL injury that missed most of last year, and you never really know how guys are going to recover from these things. I mean, medicine's come a long way. ACL injuries are not what they used to be, but there's still the question mark of what's going to happen. And Ayuk is expected to be back for week 1, but who knows? So at that point, the next man up has got to be Ricky Pearsall, who the 49ers just drafted with the 31st overall pick in last year's NFL draft. Like I know that it's been a year now and it's easy to forget, but the guy has first round draft capital sitting there. And while I've never been the biggest Brock Purdy fan, necessarily, I am a fan of Kyle Shanahan and his ability to provide us with multiple fantasy relevant options with how how good his system can be. And the 49ers, they teased us a little bit the last couple of weeks of last season. He the last 2 weeks of the year, he had 14 total receptions, 210 receiving yards, and 2 touchdowns. Now, I'm not even going to bother to extrapolate that and give you what the full season pace would be for that, because it's not sustainable. CMC wasn't on the field. Ayuk wasn't on the field. But I think Ricky Pearsall is going to be an impact player from week 1 of next year for this offense. Like right off the bat, week 1, he's going to be a significant part of this offense. And if the DLF Dynasty startup ADP for January is accurate, right now he's down at the wide receiver 54, which that just makes no sense to me at all. That has to be like a misprint or something. Makes no sense to me. But even in the Dynasty startup that Jorge put together for last week's show, he went in the 7th round, and it was ahead of Jaden Reed, ahead of Michael Pittman, ahead of Tank Dell, guys that I think he should be in front of. I think that's fair value. I've got him at wide receiver 34. I've got him in front of those guys. I think I might still be too low on him given the draft capital that he has and the question marks around that. There's even there's people asking John Lynch at the Combine, hey, we heard that Brandon Ayuk's getting trade inquiries. What's going on with that? And his only answer was like, well, we gotta try to find ways to get younger. We got to find ways to get cheaper. And like he didn't even dismiss that. Now, I don't think they're going to trade Brandon Ayuk, but they're leaving the window open. Like they could possibly move on from Debo and Ayuk to try to save room for cap and to try to get a little bit younger and things like that. I don't know what's going on with any of that. But what I do know is that Ricky Pearsall is a first-round draft pick last year that is he's controlled for several years. They invested draft capital in him, and Kyle Shanahan, even if you're not necessarily a good receiver, Shanahan will find ways to get you involved, and Ricky Pearsall is a good receiver. And so I think that he's my favorite value at the receiver position right now, if that ADP is even anywhere close to accurate.
I think that's a great call. I mean, if you look at DLF right now, he's ranked at wide receiver 42. 42 for a guy who's a first-round pick last year.
Man.
It's crazy. I mean, Ladd McConkey, we all love Ladd. He had a great year. 16.
The gap should not be that big between those two guys.
It should not be that. It should not be that big at all. I tell you what, man, this second tier of second-year wide receivers, I think are going to be a buy. Like, I think Pearsall, like you said, people are forgetting he's a first-round pick.
Yeah.
And I go, Ricky Pearsall. I'm like, dude, he's a first-round pick. Like, you tell me right now that any of these wide receivers in this year go first round, people are going to be all over them. And you're like, Ricky Pearsall was just a first-round pick last year on a super productive offense. And he's definitely going to see more. I mean, dude got shot in the chest. He missed half the year. He still came back and played.
Yeah.
Like, I mean,
and played great down the stretch.
It played great. I mean, it's I think that's just a phenomenal call. I mean, he's way too low. And you know what? Even if you don't like Ricky Pearsall, there's no way his value doesn't go up from here. I just don't think there's any way it doesn't go up. You got to take him and then look to trade him.
You can trade more. You can trade for him for more than you got him for later.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right, so let's stay in the NFC West. Speaking of the Seahawks receivers, can Geno support the alphabet wide receiver duo of DK and JSN? I like how you put that.
That's a nice little nickname. I like that.
So I mean, the short answer is yes, I think he can if the passing volume is there. That there's the question, like the Seahawks changed offensive coordinators this offseason, and I haven't dug into what that means exactly too much yet. I know on Fourth and Frames we're going to have a coaching changes episode here in a few months to kind of dig more into that. So I don't know what the offensive coordinator change means for the wide receivers necessarily. I think that the JSN emergence last year is real. I think he's the wide receiver one of this team. I still think that DK can be a wide receiver too, just off of his athletic ability, the touchdown upside, things like that. But I mean, to an extent, you're going to be banking on big plays and touchdowns to break your way. So if you can get solid value for DK, I think that he could be a good sell. But with the emergence of JSN, his value is probably not at a point where you're going to want to sell him right now. So I think it's better off to just wait for a couple spike games next year, because they will happen. Like DK Metcalf is not, unless Space Jam came down to the planet and took his athletic ability and he's not good anymore, he's still going to have good games. And so, you can try to look to sell at that point. I don't know if now is necessarily time to sell on DK, but if the passing volume is there, I think the targets can be consolidated enough because they don't. Kenneth Walker, even though he showed that he can be a serviceable pass catching running back when needed, he's not going to gobble up a bunch of targets. So I think that a lot of especially with Lockett getting a year older, the tight end not necessarily being involved a ton in the offense in the past, I think a lot of the targets are going to be consolidated just between JSN and DK. And so as long as the passing volume is there, Geno Smith is a good enough quarterback, real life NFL quarterback, that he can support those guys. It's just a matter of what you're looking to get from them, I guess.
Yeah, I think Pete Carroll's not there anymore. He wanted to run the ball all the time.
Right.
Like
yeah.
the Seahawks have shown they're going to throw the ball. I mean, even with Ken Walker, they're going to throw the ball. So I definitely think those guys are both. I think they're both due for upticks this year. I really do. I think they're fantasy wise. I think you're going to see a fairly good amount of targets for both those guys.
Yeah, so we'll see what Clint Kubiak can do, coming over to be the new OC for Seattle. And we'll dig into that more as the offseason goes on. So just stay tuned to Fourth and Frames. And
yeah, Phillips says he's with you. He has a ton of Ricky P. Hope it pays off, baby. That's right, baby.
Hey, if you invested in him, it's a good thing to do, man.
Let's see what else we got. Robert said, last wide receiver question. Anyone in Vegas intriguing to you with the QB dumpster fire and the ghost of Pete Carroll taking the helm?
Yes, whenever they draft Ted McMillan in the first round.
I was just gonna say, I think they're gonna go. I think they're gonna go with a wideout. Whether they get Ted at 6 or whether they go Shador. I know people have been talking about GT at 6. Here's the thing: is
apparently they're trading for Matt Stafford. I don't know.
Yeah, so I could see them going Stafford. I could see him going Darnold if they don't get Sanders. I think they're going to go. There's a good chance that wide receiver could drop. I saw a bunch of mocks that all of a sudden had Luther Burden not in the first round, which just blew my freaking mind.
That's crazy.
Because I love Luther Burden. If Luther Burden gets the second round, this is the Raiders we're talking about. They love athletes. They love star power. Luther Burden, I don't think there's any way he gets past the Raiders. People are like, nah, they're going to pass. I'm like, really? Really? The Raiders? I think they take some wideouts here. Brock Bowers is obviously the freaking man.
Yeah.
I said he was last year. I'm so mad the Colts didn't get him. I was praying he was going to get to him. He's a stud, but it's Brock Bowers and Jacoby Myers. You got to add to that. You got to add to that. I mean, come on.
That's what I was going to say, though, was Jacoby Myers. He was in points per game, he was the wide receiver 29 last year. Jacoby Myers, he is not a scrub by any means. If for some reason
price-wise, nobody loves him. Nobody likes him at all. And he's
nobody wants him. Yeah, so if somehow the Raiders do go through the draft process and they don't invest early in a wide receiver, I think it's fair to go buy Jacoby Myers. Brock Bowers is the guy, but he's not going to get every single target. And so, I think that Jacoby Myers would turn into a buy at that point. I fully expect that they're going to add to the receiver room during the draft. But if I'm wrong, if they don't, Jacoby Myers, he's showing he'll produce if you just give him the shot.
Yep.
And the role
I think Trey Harris would be another rookie
that would be
that I think would be a great fit for the Raiders. Trey Harris out of Ole Miss, I like a ton. I think he would be fire.
What's the big play guy they got there right now? Shit, I'm going blank on the receiver room what his name is, but Trey Harris would completely eliminate the need for the guy I'm thinking of. I can't think of his name, but the role 07, James Robinson burned me so bad that I have trust issues with players who draft bad draft capital undrafted. So we talked about Dameon Pierce earlier. James Robinson is another, which he had injuries he had to deal with too, but James Robinson is another perfect example of that. The draft, if you don't have the draft capital, the staying power isn't always there. So
the one I'm gonna the burn me. Still hope he gets a shot as Sean Tucker from Syracuse. I
was a Sean Tucker guy too, man.
I love Sean Tucker. I still think he can be a stud. We saw that one big game this year when he got a shot. He had a monster game. As soon as they took Bucky Irving, I was like, Sean Tucker's dead. Because I was like, now you have 3 of the exact same player, all in the same place. I'm like,
I was such a big Sean Tucker guy too. And his second to last year at Syracuse, man, was
so good, man.
So special.
He's so good.
He's so special. And Isaiah Spiller, a lot of people were in on Isaiah Spiller as well. Yeah, it's
these things happen sometimes, man. It's
the NFL draft.
It's this much. It's this much between a guy having a really successful career and a guy that bails out real. It's so minute. Everything's got to break right for you.
Yeah, 100%.
Let's jump in. Last segment here. Longer than we thought we were going to go tonight, but hey, we had plenty to talk about. Let's jump into tight end. Who's a tight end you're looking at? A guy that's a little more of a sleeper. This is a great. I don't know what you think about it. I think this is a crazy underrated tight end draft class. I think this could be like one of the better tight end draft classes ever. I'm like looking at mocks right now, and I'm getting guys like late third, early fourth, and I'm like, oh, there's no way I'm going to get this guy here in like a month or two. I just think this could be a really, really I mean, just for anybody that doesn't watch college, I'm going to throw it out there to you. We have two of the most productive tight ends in college football history.
Whenever you look at Loveland's production, given what the Michigan offense did,
well, then that's it. Now we're taking two of the guys that had two of the best statistical seasons in college football history, and then Loveland, if you actually took his percentage share and what he did in the offense, was through the roof. It was like one of the greatest seasons ever, even though his stats didn't match up. What he did on a terrible offense is unbelievable. I will tell you, this is what shows you how good Colson Loveland is. I watched somebody showing highlights of Colson Loveland today, and there were highlights of incomplete passes to him. Literally, they're showing like, look at him break this DB off. Look at him run this route. Holy shit, that's awesome. And then he doesn't catch the pass.
That's what you have to do to appreciate
it's getting chucked over him, because they're like, dude, if this guy was on any decent offense at all, he would have absolutely lit it up. And we've seen what some other Michigan players have been able to do in the NFL that didn't get a lot of technically stats in college because they weren't on throwing teams. But Tyler Warren, Harold Fannin from Bowling Green, and Colson Loveland, great. And that's not even talking about some of my favorite guys. I love Mason Taylor from LSU. I think he is so underrated. I think he could end up being the best dual threat in this draft as far as a guy that can inline block and receive. I think he's great. Dude, you said Arroyo. Another guy's hurt, super athletic. He's flying up draft boards. Aronde Gatson, another Syracuse guy I love. Gatson. So he was like, everybody was like, oh, he's technically a wide receiver, not really a tight end. It was a big fight in CFF leagues. Like, should he be a tight end or wide receiver? Dude, when he came in at the Senior Bowl and was like 248, I was like, yes. I thought it was going to be like 228, 230. I kid you not. I figured Syracuse just lied and said he was way heavier because, I think he was listed like 235 or 238 at Syracuse. I figured he was like 15 pounds lighter, and they were just lying because he was a tight end. Even though he looks big on the field, if you watch games, he looks big and he's tall.
Yeah. And we didn't even talk about that.
He's 6'4", like 248, and the guy can catch. He's right now is going to be still. We haven't talked about Gunnar Helm. We haven't talked about Ferguson from Oregon yet. I just think this is. I really want the Colts to take Kylan Warren in the first round, but then part of me is like, can we wait?
There's so much value they can wait.
Mason Taylor like in the third, and can we take Aronde Gatson in the fourth or fifth? I'm like, can we double up? It's wild. So as I got crazy I just can't help myself. I get crazy into the rookie talk. Yeah. What is a tight end in startups you're looking to get that's outside of those top like 5-6 guys that everybody's grabbing?
Yeah, so he was outside the top 5 last year in points per game, which was kind of the prerequisite that we set for this. He's still inside the top 5 tight ends for Dynasty startup rank or Dynasty startup ADP, but I want to show him some love. I still feel a little bit bad for Mark Andrews after the way that his season ended, after that brutal drop. And so I want to try to lift him up a little bit. And now, if you were a fantasy manager that had Andrews in your lineup for his back-to-back goose eggs in week 3, week 4, you probably don't care to hear this. but I happen to think that Mark Andrews is still really damn good at football. And I don't know if the car wreck that he got into in the offseason was affecting his game or what was going on. But once he got past whatever was holding him back to start the year, he was the tight end 7 from week 6 to week 17. And then if you want to look at how he closed out the season, the fantasy season, he was even better. He was the tight end 5 from week 12 to week 17. So he's still that guy that we wanted him to be from a tight end perspective. Now, Brock Bowers, Trey McBride, Sam Laporta, not accounting for the rookies that if you're doing startups with rookies, there's probably some guys that you can make an argument should go before Andrews. But those 3 guys are the only guys that I think should clearly go above Mark Andrews in startups. At that point, I think it's a toss-up between him and George Kittle. And I'm taking Andrews over Hawkinson. I'm taking him over Kincaid. I'm taking him over Kelsey, which I don't think is a hot take at this point anymore. But like I think that there's 3 clear guys currently in the NFL right now that should go ahead of him and start up drafts, and that's it. At that point, I think you should be considering Mark Andrews, and I think that he was the tight end 6 off the board. It was tight end 5 or tight end 6 off the board. I know he went behind T.J. Hawkinson in the Fantasy and Frames mock draft that they did that you guys reviewed last week. And so I wanted to highlight Andrews because he's just been such a consistently solid pass catcher. And despite the bad that happened at the very end of the year, Lamar has continued to look his way. I don't think that that's going to change. And he's going to continue to be an involved part of this offense. Now, there's been some question marks of will he even be on the Ravens? I don't think he's going anywhere this year. Maybe after this year, they look to move off of him and move toward Isaiah Likely. But I don't think that there's, I don't think that there's anything to be worried about, at least for this year. And I think that he's going to have another really strong season attached to Lamar. So I think that Mark Andrews is a guy that you can target in startups and a guy that you can even go trade for and try to buy low a little bit on if there's somebody that's, some recency bias with the concern that we saw with the drop in the playoffs. But even with the drop, he still played great in the playoffs too. So I don't understand where the limbo comes with Mark Andrews, I guess.
Yeah, I think, like we talked about before, he's a value right now compared to what he's been in the last couple of years. And startup, you're going to get him way later than you would. And honestly, I agree with you. I'd rather have him than quite a few of these other guys, especially at cost. I mean, he's not super old. He's still been productive. Like you said, last year, 55 catches, 673 yards.
And all he does is run routes.
11 freaking touchdowns, man.
All he does is run
touchdowns.
Routes. They don't ask him to block. They don't ask him to do none of that. They just
he is exactly what you want in a fantasy tight end.
Yeah.
Like, don't ever block. Just run routes. Yes, thank you. That's what I want you to do.
Yeah.
I love it. I think, again, if you're looking to go just outside that top hair where everybody's taking a little bit of the younger guys and you're looking for a little bit more, hey, I'm in a startup getting a buy now, like win now team, Mark Andrews is the tight end for you, I think. You're going to get him way cheaper, less draft capital, and he's going to get you points. So I love that. For me, as Rob asks, and he jumps in here and says, any rando non-rookie tight end names that could make an impact this year, always hope for the next Aaron. So this is a guy I was on last year, telling people I thought he could push for a tight end 1. He could be a top 12 tight end. I just liked where he was at. He ended up finishing, if you go points per game, it was half point PPR, so no tight end premium. So he was 15th in points per game as far as Fantasy Pros scoring was concerned. If you go over overall scoring, he ended up finishing 14th. He's right in that mix. But to me, Cade Otton for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, 59 catches, 600 yards, ended up with 4 touchdowns. Now, he had some bigger games once Godwin got hurt. But Baker Mayfield really started to like him a lot at the end of last year in the playoffs. He had a couple of really nice playoff games. Now, he had some really nice games and some absolute duds this year where they didn't look at him at all. But again, to me, if you're looking for like young and cheap, like, hey, I'm punting tight end early, I'm not going to take anyone in the top 10. I'm going to load up on all my other positions, but who's a guy that I could throw in my starting lineup every week and feel confident he can give me something, and then a couple weeks a year he's going to have me a really nice game. To me, that's K-Dot. I just think this, if you saw last year, this Bucs offense, obviously coaching change on the offense coordinator, but this offense was cooking last year. I mean, they were putting up points. And it wasn't just like one guy was getting touches. Evans was getting touches. Bucky was getting touches. Godwin was getting touches. McMillan came in. He was getting I mean, there was multiple guys across the board on this Bucs offense that was giving you fantasy relevant weeks every week. So if I'm punting tight end in a startup, Kate Otten is I'm looking at Pat Freiermuth first, barely ahead of him, but I think they're in the same kind of boat. But if I'm looking for definitely more consistent play because I know who the quarterback is and I know he's a gunslinger, I'm taking Kate Otten first because I just don't know what's going to happen. Even though I like Muth as a player slightly more, I think Kate Otten's the safer pick if you're waiting because he is on a good offense. And again, we've gotten really, really spoiled the last couple of years with some young tight ends blown up right away.
Yeah.
Usually it's 3 years. I mean, we got to wait at least 3 years before we see these guys really develop. Kate Otten's going in year 4. I mean, he's looked good. He's mid-20s. He's literally stepping in to what is technically usually that tight end prime. That tight end prime is usually like 25, 26 to about 30 is when those guys really blow up and have like the best years of their career. So he's a guy I like a lot. If I'm passing on everybody else,
I'll give you one other name too.
Jump in. Give me the next guy you got. Who you like?
Ben Sinnott, tight end for the Washington Commanders.
Second round buy, the second year buy. Yeah, the second year buy. I love it.
It's the I don't think he's going to be Trey McBride necessarily, but it's the Trey McBride career arc. He had Zach Ertz in front of him during his rookie year, as did Ben Sinnott in Washington. Zach Ertz is a free agent. Maybe Washington decides to bring him back. I don't know, but I find it hard to believe that the Commanders spent the 53rd overall pick in the second round of the NFL draft for him to only have 5 catches in his rookie year and then to be like, we're going to run that back in his second year. I think that they have a more expanded role in mind for him. He was over 14 yards per reception his last 2 years in college. Like the guy can make plays as a pass catcher. Shout out to Chris Battistell. He's the whole reason that I'm even on this guy because of him telling me early on in the process last year that I needed to be. And looking into it, there's a lot to be excited about him as a playmaker and a pass catcher. And the question mark was, at least for me, for his rookie season was, does he actually have a quarterback though? Because we didn't know what Jaden Daniels would be at an NFL level. Like he was great in college, but to be determined in the pros. And he – in very convincing fashion showed that he's the real deal. So we know that Ben Sinnott has the quarterback play. And now with Zach Ertz no longer on the depth chart, they don't have a clear wide receiver 2 behind Terry McLaurin. Now, I hope for the sake of Jaden Daniels that they do something to address that in the NFL draft. But if they don't, Ben Sinnott could be sitting in a prime position to have a great year 2 breakout. And I think he has the skills to do so, and he has the quarterback play to help make it happen now. So he's a guy that he did basically – he basically had a red shirt year as a rookie. He did virtually nothing. So you can – if somebody has forgotten about the draft capital or has forgotten about the tape that he put on in college at Kansas State, go see if you can buy him. And then maybe to Rob's point, maybe you have the next Darren Waller. Who knows? So I think he's a guy worth buying. He's somebody that I'm looking into, somebody that could be a little bit forgotten about.
I love that call. Sinnott, he was a guy flew up my draft board last year, pre-NFL draft. He went like, I don't even know if I was really paying attention. But next thing I know, I'm watching film. I'm checking him out. I'm like, dude, I love this guy. He jumped up to my tight end 2 behind Brock Bowers last year. And I was like, he's my guy. Any kind of huge tight end premium or 2 tight end league, he jumped way up my board in those leagues. And again, I took him in quite a few spots And I also said, just like a couple other guys, I'm like, I'm taking him. Knowing I'm probably getting nothing
Right.
his first year. He was a guy's converted fullback, basically played a bunch of different spots for Kansas State. I was like, this guy's going to be good. It's just going to take him some time to figure out how to play tight end at the NFL level and for a team to really get him into the mix. I think he's primed for a breakout this year. I agree with you. And unless you've been paying attention, he's going to fall way down. Like he's going to fall way down in Stardust because you're looking at the list, you're looking at ADP, you're looking at stats. He's got none of that. He's got none of that unless you remember his draft capital from last year. I think that's a great call, especially like Rob said, if you want to take a swing at a guy that you're hoping like, I can take this guy late and I'm hoping I hit a grand slam with him. And if I strike out, I strike out. Sinet's probably the best grand slam shot as a tight end.
He's going behind Brenton Strange and Dalton Schultz and guys like that right now in dynasty startups.
Perfect. Yep. Grab him.
He's completely free. Who cares if you're wrong?
Like I said, he's the grand slam or the strikeout guy. If you're swinging for it, I just think, again, it's one of these draft strategies I talk about. I love buying second-year guys that didn't hit as rookies. You're just going to get them so much cheaper than they went as rookies. It's just the way it is. Like people get all fired up, then they don't hit, and Dynasty is a long game, folks. It's a long game. A lot of people don't play the long game. They hate the long game. They're like, that guy didn't hit for me. Bam, I want to get rid of him. They're ready to get rid of guys immediately. The second they have one bad week or get one injury, they're like, I'm out. This guy sucks. And it's like, it's just the way people are now. It's like, you gotta give some guys some time. And as someone who loves to draft tight ends late in rookie drafts, I'm the king of holding on to people too long. I'll give a guy forever before I'm like, all right, fine, I gotta cut him. I gotta finally get him off my team. So I love that second round strategy. Drew, this hour-long show is now coming on 2 hours.
2 shows.
As we got a little crazy tonight, but hey, there was nothing else here on Fantasy and Frames. So we figured we had plenty of time to let it roll. Any final thoughts of the night before we say goodbye to the people?
No, just I hope you guys stay tuned in with us here at Fantasy and Frames. Obviously, JT, John, they're going to be heading to the combine, so make sure that you're tuned in to their Twitter accounts for some combine coverage, and we'll be hanging out on here Dynasty 365 for for the foreseeable future, and then Fourth and Frames, our redraft show, we pick up back in mid-March once free agency kicks up, and there's actually redraft stuff to talk about because there's just nothing redraft to talk about right now. But once we get some free agency news and we have some redraft implications to talk about, the redraft show will be back, and we'll have our full lineup of Dynasty, redraft, IDP, draft show, everything you can think of. So just, make sure you got the notifications turned on, make sure you're locked in, and we'll get you covered regardless of what your flavor is.
Yep, sounds good. Follow Drew at Drew3MR. You can follow me at JT Orange. John McGlynn will also be, like Drew said, at the combine with me. John McGlynn 75. You can follow him. We'll be posting stuff on our pages, but we'll also be having it on the Fantasy and Frames X page. So make sure you check that as well. We're going to hopefully get you guys some videos, some quotes, some stuff we're hearing over at the combine, some thoughts as we're watching everybody. Like I said, one of my favorite events to go to. So we'll be bringing you that coverage. Hopefully, if Jorge's feeling a little bit better tomorrow, we're going to bring you our segment for Startup IDP. What we like is some sleepers and guys. We'll bring that to you tomorrow night. So make sure to check us out. Also, if you're into hockey or you want to think about getting into hockey around the ice on Fantasy and Frames, Fifth Hockey, you can follow us on the X. We had a bunch of scheduling conflicts this week. We had to move it back, but next week, Monday, we'll be kicking it back off Monday nights for the next couple months. And then back during the season, we'll get back to our regular Tuesday nights. But right now, things are crazy on Tuesdays. So Monday nights, check us out there. Follow these shows. Hit the notification button, just like Drew said, let you know when we have stuff flowing here on the Fantasy and Frames channel. Drew, Thanks for hanging out tonight, man. Had a great time chatting with it. And thanks for bringing up Colts players. Always makes my night. Always makes me talk a little bit longer. You know the show's going to be a long time when we start talking Colts and Steelers. But that's going to do it for us here on Dynasty 365. For Drew, I'm JT. Thanks, everybody. We'll check you next time.